purview. That is the purview of the ZBA. That is what Dr. Hunter said, so the notes are accurate, but it's not an accurate thing. So I don't know what we do about that. The Natural Resources Commission, the Water Board, there are numerous people, the planning board, all funnel input into the ZBA who makes a determination about that.
I suggest we leave the minutes the way they were, because that's what she said, but we could add a comment to today's minutes.
However you want to proceed, but I just thought I'd point out that it's just not,
So
it's not accurate. They're not the gatekeeper on that, it's the ZBA.
On that same section, I just had a question, the sentence, Tom, that refers to you as a sentence before that. I just don't think it makes sense. Mr. Tarpey asked for a commitment that additional funding for new parking would not occur if funding for this project is approved. So do you mean would not be requested? I didn't understand the sentence. This is a park, I don't know, it's a park.
In other words, we were trying to shut the door. Like,
Yeah.
if you get this,
Funding for
Get this
additional
done.
new parking.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Additional new parking, so.
That a request would not be made, I guess, or is that the intent?
Yeah, would not be requested. It's
Not
be
requested.
It would not occur. It sounded strange to me.
It's one of those curmudgeonly type comments that I would wish to take back. But,
No, I think it's a good one. My other comment was, it said we had no citizen comments, but didn't we have a person come up and speak to us about what the building commission, was it going to run by the school or by the town?
We did have a public comment.
We had a
We
public
did.
comment,
I
she
just-
came to the
yes.
table?
We did.
She did, so, do you remember that?
From the Board of Assessors.
Cynthia Raymond?
Cynthia Raymond.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
I thought, you're right, she did, but I thought I put it, I thought she said it during the discussion,
Oh, maybe I missed
not
it.
at the end. I think she came up
Oh,
with
yeah,
it.
it's on page 5, bottom of page 5.
Oh, there it is. I thought I,
She was a citizen, but she didn't wait to the end.
okay, all right.
anyone else have any other comments? I have my usual suite of nitpicky comments. On the first page in the second paragraph from the bottom that begins Dr. Hunter, in the third line, pretty much right in the middle, there's a phrase that after the comment says, noting that the much. So that's a superfluous the there. On page 2, the first full paragraph beginning Dr. Hunter review. I don't know whether I'm conflating something I heard in a school committee meeting, but that sentence where she says she projected an increased cost of, I think they had a bracket of 3 to 7%. But Dean, you've been to the same school committee meetings. I know they don't know it's exactly 7%, so.
The actual.
That was the chart.
Something
Yeah.
like, we share that chart.
You had redundancy and growth and growth,
Right.
it was that chart. I don't know. I
I
don't
thought
know.
it was-
Did they say 7? Okay, all right,
Because
so,
that's what she used.
Which is-
math on,
Yeah.
And
right?
Ian said it as well.
Yes.
7
Okay.
times
Or Ian
90.
or-
all right.
Ian. Ian.
Let's see.
And Ian, I believe, also reached that number.
I think he did.
Double increase the list.
So in the next paragraph, the one that begins in response to a question, in the second to last line, actually the third to last line, the ending, the sentence begins, she noted that Concord could separately costs.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think separate costs.
Right, right.
And then on page 4, at the very bottom, there's an acronym in the last line, CASE. Is that a previously defined acronym? Because I don't know what it means.
It's not previous in the set of minutes. It's,
So for the purpose
so,
of
yeah, I can spell it out.
the innocent reader, what does it mean, by the way?
Don't know.
Okay, all right. No,
Heard
it
it,
doesn't.
buddy.
Okay.
Know what
All right.
they do, but.
that was all I had. I think this is an appropriate time for me to say,
Concord Areas Special Ed.
There you go. That's it.
it's what?
Concord
Concord
Areas
Area.
Special Ed.
Thank you very much. So I wish to express my appreciation for what are some of the best minutes I've ever read in any committee. I can't believe what a thorough and accurate job you do, and I thank you very much.
Put that in the minutes.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as corrected and seconded.
Little second.
And all in favor? Aye. Unanimous? Good. Let's see. I think we've pretty much wrung out the articles with Mr. Whalen's help. Review of FinCom report assignments. So this would be an assignment of our members, one of our members, to report both to the public, I think the public hearing and the town meeting on each one of the articles about which we are going to weigh in. I don't
Is that
have,
for the FinCom report?
what's that?
For the FinCom report.
For the, and the FinCom report, exactly. I don't know, is this apropos at this moment, or should we wait until after the public hearing to?
There are a couple of different things associated with our report. One is our commentary that we may wish or may not wish to offer on any particular article, but the report itself has several body sections where we talk about debt service, or we opine about school budgets with lots of dense numbers in those paragraphs that we can share. Those are going to need to be assigned.
It's the letter to taxpayers.
Yeah, whatever, however you want to, it's sort of Mary has her copy of last year, and so, there's a chair's letter, which is, but there are, there are some healthy bits of writing that need to be, done, and some of them have charts. So those do need assigned.
Right. I have been laboriously going through the Finance Committee reports for the last 10 years and looking at the charts that each of our predecessor committees has decided to put in. And there's a wide variation, actually. And there are some charts that I've found in the oldest reports, which are for fiscal '09, that are quite useful, that have not been used since. And so I would propose to make a list of the ones that I think we should submit and circulate that to the FinCom. And if any of you want to borrow my cache of 10 years of FinCom reports, I borrowed them myself, Ms. LaFleur. So I think she would probably allow me to do a not regifting, but
Are there any that stand out in your mind, particularly?
no. I would say that some hit some points and others hit others.
All of which, however, are award-winning.
And how many are we expected to have? How many charts can we propose?
I'd say they
It sounds like
vary.
a college assignment. How many paragraphs do I have, and what font size am I allowed to use?
And how will this be graded?
There is typically a set of 3 charts and tables at the very beginning of the report that talks about the apportionment of income and expense. Those are usually pie charts. The FinCom report of '09 had this extremely interesting bar chart that talked about the distribution of new expense by department. And I personally think that that's something that we'd all benefit from looking at. But
So, Carrie, does OML allow this to be distributed to us as long as there's no deliberation with respect to any of the, yeah? Okay. I'd like to see them.
Okay, so what I can do is photocopy them, make PDFs of them, and ship them around. Actually, I'll have Carrie ship them around, and that gets by any open meeting law concerns. All right, so I think, Carrie, would you like to address this little packet you've given us?
So last week, there was some discussion about debt service, and you've brought debt service up at a number of meetings. And so I put this presentation together. It's not too long, but to give you an idea of what we have in terms of our existing debt and what projected debt might look like. I gave this presentation a trial run at our staff meeting this morning, and they already said, oh, the numbers are too low. So I said, well, we have to start somewhere.
They said the numbers were
The numbers were too low in terms of costs for anticipated capital projects. But as I mentioned, we're on the town side, we're in the process of, we've undertaken a municipal facility study where we've hired an architect to put together a very comprehensive study. And we heard the beginnings of his report this morning. And we're quite a ways away from hearing dollars associated with this. So we've just pulled some numbers sort of out of the air that don't have a lot of substance behind them, but just to give you an idea of what this would look like. So just to start this off, when we issue debt, it's either classified as exempt or non-exempt. If it's non-exempt debt, the debt service is funded within the existing levy. It's approved by town meeting, but it's within the levy, so there's no additional voter authorization needed at the ballot. If it's exempt, it's outside of the levy, and in addition to requiring town meeting approval, there's a ballot question that specifically authorizes that debt. So we often will talk about whether things are non-exempt or exempt. All of the debt we issue is part of our outstanding debt, but some of it has additional financial consequences to it.
So how do we decide which bucket an issuance goes into?
So that is whether it's exempt or not. In most towns, it has to do with what's available within the levy. Do you have funds available within the levy to service that debt or not? Here, we do have more options than many places because we do have unused levy capacity, but typically the building projects are going to be proposed to the voters as being outside of the levy.
And the levy limit, that's the Prop 2.5, that's our unused levy, so many millions of dollars that we have?
Yes, so we have about $4.5 million worth of unused levy limit, and I've got a slide to show you sort of, well, we'll get into that in a minute. But this is our existing debt. The chart on the left-hand side is what the debt service payments are on an annual basis, and on the right side it shows the distribution of the debt service. So I'm showing non-exempt and projected non-exempt as the first two categories. The projected non-exempt really is the annual debt plan. Chris Whalen talked to you about what the town is proposing in terms of the debt plan. The school has a debt plan that's within the levy. That's what that projected non-exempt debt is. Then we have the exempt debt, which is, for the most part, the school building projects. I've added in the district's debt. I don't think I've showed you a graph before that had the town's debt and the district's debt. And this is the town's share of the district's debt. and then enterprise debt, which is funded through user fees, but still paid by the taxpayer.
The enterprise debt does not include building the Nagog Pond facility because that hasn't been issued yet.
Right, there's no projected
No project.
for enterprise debt. The only projection I'm making here is just for that annual debt plan in the projected debt. I'm showing you 17 to 29 because fiscal 29 is as far out as the town's debt service schedules go. The town does not have any debt that has annual payments past fiscal 29. The only debt that we have that goes out past 29 is for the district, and I've shown that in other graphs. But this
High
is,
school.
yes,
High school debt.
for the high school debt.
Terry, would you say again what projected non-exempt consists of?
So that is the annual debt plan. So on an annual basis, the town issues within the levy limit about $4 to $6 million for minor building renovations, for purchase of fire trucks and ambulances, the large DPW equipment, maybe a land purchase, park improvements. The school does minor building renovations or remodels or repairs within that.
Carrie, what's
Right.
the
So that's
exempt again?
Article 7 and what other things too?
Article 7 and then the school's article, which is,
Projected non-exempt. Oh, the school's capital.
the school has $900,000 on this
Yeah.
warrant.
And is this principal and interest?
Yes.
These are children.
Regional.
So it's not the regional school, it's the,
I'm sorry,
what is the exempt again?
So the exempt debt, the green here
Yes.
is it's mostly the school buildings, Alcott, Thoreau, and Willard. There is, the school bus depot is exempt, and then there's a small portion related to a water main project that is exempt. The purple, which is the district, that is also exempt, but it's the district's debt.
Our share.
It's our share.
It's our share.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So, and you're saying that the projected non-exempt is pretty much a steady renewal of, or assumption of debt?
Yes,
Running approximately $4 to $6
$4
million.
to $6 million.
Why is the debt service on that increasing?
Well, I think based on what we're looking at over the 5-year period, I know the years going out, it's probably closer to $6 million. Now that may not happen, but based on our capital, our existing needs that we know of, that we've projected out over a period of years, it fluctuates between $4 to $6 million.
So in out years, the red will become blue,
Yes.
basically, once
Yeah.
it gets authorized.
Right.
So we are in year one, this year.
Oh, I
or
guess
2013,
I misunderstood.
Right? So the red becomes blue. It's what we think will be blue in
Yes.
a few years from now.
So,
So
an
red is projected.
an additional
5% of, or so it's kind of 5% of our town budget, about, we project to, it's
Yeah.
almost a maintenance account. It's
Right.
Yes.
So CapEx, but it's a maintenance of CapEx.
Yes.
right?
Another graph that I personally would find interesting would be the actual debt amount over this period. We're looking at debt service.
The outstanding.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
The balance sheet.
It's like
The amount.
100-something million, right? The big number.
Minus, yeah.
No, the town has 50, I think it's 52 million outstanding at this point in time.
But when you, do you add the high school? I
Percentage of the high
I
school.
don't know, I look at the whole thing.
Right, well, I guess we're gonna get there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
She's a tough crowd, huh?
Okay, so this is just looking at exempt debt. So debt that we levy over and above 2.5 to cover.
It's really, sorry, just on this exempt versus non-exempt, we have been fitting into our budget the 5 million, just ballpark, 5 million number every year right, as kind of part of our, it fits in neatly, it's there. Anything that's outside of that has to become this exempt, right? We build a new high school, that's exempt. We build
Right.
anything else, it's, so basically our non-exempt is just the maintenance of non-remarkable improvements. Is that the way to think about it?
Well, that and land purchases, we've done,
As
park,
exempt?
parkland, no, as non-exempt.
Oh, okay.
Some of them, I think, like a new fire truck or something is kind of remarkable, not as remarkable as.
It's a school, it's a $90 million middle school.
So this is the annual debt service associated with exempt debt for both the town and the district. It's broken out here by project, so you can see the different components of the exempt debt on the left. And then on the right-hand side, this is the impact to the taxpayer. The green line is median, is average, and the red is median. So right now, or projected for fiscal '20, there's about $900 in additional taxes raised for exempt debt at median, and about $1,100 on the average tax bill.
I believe we heard at the school committee meeting the other night, that if the middle school building is built and costs about $9 million to build, that it would add to the median tax bill $800. So what you're saying here is that the median tax bill today is like $900 worth of debt, and that would add an additional $800.
So it doubles.
It would sort of double the debt.
I would say 800 is a little on the low side. I put
809 was
those
the exact number.
809. Okay, so I think they probably. Okay.
So for $90 million.
That's the number I wrote down.
How many years do they finance it typically?
So that 25 years, but under state law you can go out 30 years, but the high school is on a 25-year repayment, and so the middle school, maybe they did a scenario that was 30 years, because I gave them some information on 20 and 25, and 8 seems a little low. I thought about 900 was the lowest, but maybe if it went out 30.
So then, just principal alone, if it's straight line, right, 100 divided by 25 is 4, then of course you have your interest costs on it, so you're, if it works like a mortgage, you're minimally 4, but then you have your interest, so you're 6, so therefore they would double our total, ballpark, which would make sense.
Yeah.
It would double your ballpark, your total exempt debt in middle school.
Right.
These are all based on a $90 million number that I don't know the basis
It's
for
very
at all.
squishy.
They just threw it out, but what it is it's, I guess just for ballpark, I think it's helpful, right? What it's not is, it's not going to
Well, I
increase this
worry-
by 5%, it's going to roughly double it.
Yeah. I just worry that if we keep articulating 90 million, that becomes an expectation.
So we should say
whereby-
80. So,
Yeah.
okay, so our $80 million middle school.
I don't know, the 90 million just feels to me like it has very little basis, and I would say it's probably a highball number. It makes me uneasy. No.
I think that construction costs have been going up quite rapidly in the last few years, and, I think when the study was done 2 years ago, number 70, and maybe that was just the construction cost, not the total project cost, sticks in my mind, but over 2 years, probably over 5%, 6% a year.
It's just the design of the school, though, determines the cost too, not just the rise in construction, right? Or do we have no flexibility with the design?
It's a school, you have to make it safe, and it has to have, be environmentally, for the students, and it has to last for hopefully more than 30 years.
So
Construction's very costly.
if it were built at the time of the high school, apples to apples, maybe it was a $50 million project then, or something, right?
Well,
60, whatever. Right?
yeah,
But just back, the 7% go backwards.
Let's forge
We
ahead.
got off track.
Yeah, exactly.
So this slide shows the existing, the same slide that, or the same graph that we looked at, but this is the existing debt just broken down between the three entities, the town, CPS, and the district. And it's cumulative.
Annual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cumulative in, to
You pay it 1 year, you pay it the next year.
So this slide here, I've been asked, well, so how can we fit in any of these capital projects? Whether we're talking about the middle school, we're talking about town needs, how could we fit in these projects? And the darker blue is a graph of the existing debt. And so if you said the existing exempt debt, the level of existing exempt debt that we're paying right now is fine, that's fine with us. And as we retire that debt, we're going to keep that, the level that we're paying current, constant. Obviously, it requires approval of town meeting and additional ballot questions. But what could you do? And I had trouble with this, and I apologize, the numbers are all over the place. But in fiscal 21, if you took the difference between the annual debt payment in 20 and 21, what could you finance with that? You could finance $1.5 million. In 23, you could finance $7 million. In 25, $10.5, all the way out to
Cumulative.
right.
So it's like a sinking fund. If you took that same payment, if you level payment and put it the extra into a sinking fund, this is your cumulative balance of your sinking fund.
Right, of what you could
Saved,
finance.
what you could have, right.
What you could find. Not within the levy, because this is outside.
We currently have a $7 million nut every year for service on our exempt debt. And she's just gonna keep
So
that
we kept it the same.
close to something. It's
And this includes town and high school, or is this just town?
No, this is just what you could finance, the size of a project or combination of projects that you could finance without increasing the existing exempt
Yeah.
debt any further.
Well, so
Right.
we could afford a 29 mil, FY 29, we could afford a $34 million project.
You could. And the one data point that's not on here is
In addition to what we're
FY
paying already.
FY 38 is, you could afford approximately a $50 million project. And I'll clean this graph up a little
So
bit.
that's cumulative, so these other projects, you can all say do and still get. So there's not-
No, this is just showing in any one fiscal year, if you kept the level of exempt debt where it is currently, what you could afford through the retirement of debt.
So if we
Within
kept
the
what we're paying
expenditure
right
that we're
now
paying
to
now.
service,
Yes.
can I just, if we kept what we're paying right now to service our exempt debt, right? In 2021, we have an extra 1.5 million that we could borrow and keep paying the
Yes.
service the same.
Yes.
That's not a lot.
Other ways
Yeah.
for it to be.
And so we've talked about before, the,
Talking about 10 years.
I was trying to see how the 90 million school fits in.
we have one school project coming off of debt service in fiscal 26, another in 27, and then Willard in 30, in fiscal 30. Or at the end of fiscal 29, so fiscal for fiscal
No
30.
wiggle room, right? That's
If we wait 10
Which
years, we
says-
can finance maybe a third of the new middle school.
Right, yeah.
And keep our,
That's it,
that-
cost what it's
our
saying.
service
That's
payments.
the cost what it's saying.
Exactly, and it won't be.
So then,
So, yeah.
right, so big picture is we've already done a lot of construction projects in the last X, 10, whatever, how many years, right, 10 or 15 years.
Yep.
And we're paying the bills for them, so we're turning over all 100% of our schools.
Yeah,
In a 10-year period, ideally you
It
would
really, you'd stagger
stagger them
it.
out 7,
Yeah.
pick it, right, it's 30 years, you have a high school, 7 years later, you have middle school, right? Because otherwise you
There was a
generate.
plan to do that. There was a plan to do that. It was put out in 2002.
Master plan.
Which makes sense, right? Because then you have each generation that's here has basically constant payments, and in some ways, right? It just fits into the concept of level payments, which is an equitable way. Right? If you live in town now, it's bad. If you come in 15 years from now, geez, you're loving it because all the stuff's paid off.
Let's get to
Karen,
the scary
Yeah.
part.
so are the exempt payments on exempt debt, did we say we're about 7 million a year?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and we have a $4 million cushion, so if there were no exempt debt, then we would have exceeded our Prop 2.5.
Right, you could not have financed all of these within the levy.
Okay.
It's interesting, and you feel good because we're within levy limit, but it's all just
But-
artificial,
Yeah,
and
it's-
it still
yeah.
impacts taxpayers, right?
Yes.
Which is-
Yes.
It's an accounting game, that's all it is,
Yeah.
right? It means nothing to a taxpayer.
Right, exactly.
It's purely
It's off sheet
off balance sheet,
financing.
off-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not all about.
It's just
It's not balance sheet,
But- Well,
but
yeah.
it's actually, it's an irrelevant classification. It means
Yeah.
absolutely nothing, right?
Well, it
Because
does mean it has to go to the ballot box.
Good point.
It's not-
Yeah, that's the whole
So,
point.
But I do-
excuse me,
Is that it goes to the-
this is an interesting sort of roundtable discussion, but it's probably very difficult to take minutes, this conversation, so.
Right.
Good point. You can't do it without town vote.
Okay, so what are the large-scale anticipated projects? Middle school, public works complex, public safety complex, municipal buildings. I've identified numbers for the purpose of modeling. I understand we haven't done a middle school feasibility study. We're in the process of doing a feasibility study for the other three, but to model, you have to pick a number. And I am by no way saying this is what these will cost, but we had to start somewhere. So these total $155 million together. And this, I can tell you, this is where some of the department heads said those numbers are not, they're not accurate. But in meeting with the town manager last week, these were the numbers we decided to model. So this slide shows, again, the projected annual debt service that would be associated with these projects alone. This does not include any of the existing projects. These are for these 4 projects alone. What the debt service payments would be and what the impact to the median tax bill would be. So the school was modeled at $90 million over 25 years. The municipal buildings was modeled at $15 million over 20 years using our rapid repay method, which is 60% of principal is paid in the first, in this case, in the first 10 years, 40% in the second 10 years. Public works and public safety were both modeled the same way. I notice it says 25 million for public works. It's actually 30 million. So I'll have to make that adjustment to the slide. And the assumption was made that again, in talking to the town manager, at least for the town projects, that the first project to go forward would be municipal buildings. And I'm just assuming that we would be ready to go and finance that in fiscal 20, which obviously is not the case. It's not going to move that fast, but just for modeling purposes, that would be the first one to go. Then the middle school, because in listening to the superintendent last week, I believe she said 4 years, so I just assumed in 4 years we would be financing that. And then the next project to go would be Public Works, and that's 5 years. I split out the municipal projects 5 years each. And that's what that looks like.
So you're showing $1,000 median hit to the property tax bill for the school in FY24. Is that, am I reading this correctly?
Yes.
1,000.
Yes, because the model, so I'm not sure what was presented at the school committee, but they were provided with many different scenarios. And the scenario I'm using is 90 million over 25 years.
And our median tax bill in town now
800 plus.
No,
No,
the
Tax
per year, tax bill.
total,
No, median.
not median,
Median tax
yeah,
bill.
just under 12, under
No, I thought that was the
12,000.
average.
So the average home of,
No, that's not the average.
800 times $14 a thousand right now, or, so say it again, so 11,000? So it's basically this, the middle school alone is 10%. It would bump the average taxpayer 10% for a long time, right? And actually, all these combined, so at 1,600, so you're 10-15% increase in tax bill.
Not deductible from your federal tax.
That's right.
You're right.
So it's a backlog of non-built CapEx, right? That's a big chunk.
Yeah.
Thank you for pulling this together, right? That's the whole,
Yeah.
that's the whole point, because, hey, let's go build, let's go do this. Well, thank you, that's great. And it's magnitude, right? So we're not holding, we said just
Right.
give us rough numbers, but what it's not is a 2% increase in the average taxpayer or 13 cents a day, whatever it is, right? The average tax bill will
I
go up.
wonder what this does to our sustainable growth rate.
So this alone,
What
So,
interest rate are you assuming?
That's a good
4%.
question.
well, what's interesting, sorry.
what I think another, an additional graph that would be interesting would be to add this graph, which is the projected annual debt service payments that you've shown. And I don't know,
To our existing.
there it is, that's the one on the left. And add that to the first graph that you showed, which was for all annual debt service payments. And just looking at, taking a few examples, where you've reached a peak in the anticipated debt by project graph, you've reached a peak in fiscal 29 of $12+ million. The previous graph is showing a level of only about a little over, well, right around 5 million. So I think it would be interesting to look at these superimposed on each other. Just,
It's 3x,
um,
or it's 2, right? Yeah, you're doubling, you're going from 6 to
Yeah, you're
18.
right, we're building
well,
capacity.
actually, it isn't really doubling,
Yeah.
because as you're reaching a peak in 29, your existing, what we've got on the books is hitting close to a minimum. It's declining rapidly. So it's not doubling, and it's surprisingly, I mean, it's a little scary in the sort of fiscal 25 range.
Yeah, because you're going from 5, in 25, you're going from 5 million
You then are almost doubling.
to 17 million, you're tripling.
Actually, you'd be
You
going,
go from 5 to 16.
you'd be going,
Well, I don't know,
you'd be going from 11 and a half
Plus.
to 22 and a half.
I had the other way, if you were in 25, you're at 5 million, say. We
So
still try.
I'm looking here. So all debt.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I just, oh, exactly, I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
So Anyway, I suppose there are many different ways you can parse this.
But what's interesting is if our entire budget this year, if I do this right, if our entire budget, town, schools, region, went up, that guy, $3 million this year, I mean, right, 3 million-ish, is that right? All of our totals, Kerry? 3 million-ish, or so, right? We're talking layering on 10 million. So 1 year increase of debt service is 3 times our annual increase that for our entire towns and schools and everything else. This is so far what writes the dog in the tail. This is so much bigger than anything else we contemplate, right? But cumulative, right? It's 3 times our cumulative increase in all of our town expenses is 1 year of this, which says this is our this is obviously the biggest impact we have. So whether a town increases by 3.1% or 3.2%, this is the big net in terms of dollars, right?
So in the next graph, it's actually the next 2 graphs. One shows median household, one shows the average household. This is just showing that the peak, if you did all of these projects as you were talking about, the peak year is fiscal '25, and the debt burden on the tax bill would be $2,259, as opposed to where we are right now at about $900 for the median household.
Say that again, Karen?
This is the chart they were looking for.
Yeah.
So in
FY20, the median, this is median,
in fiscal '20, the estimated portion of the tax that's associated with the exempt debt is $900.
got it, thank you.
If we were to move forward with all of these projects and they cost exactly this and they were funded in this way, the peak year would be fiscal '25, and that 900 right now would rise up to $2,259. And I put a note at the bottom that the municipal projects, as I mentioned, the model is a rapid repayment with the 60/40 method. That increases the peak year by $57 on the tax bill, but it saves over the life of that project $2.6 million of interest. And the same for the average here. In fiscal '20, the exempt debt burden is about $1,100, and it would rise to $2,851 in fiscal '25. The rapid model increases that by $69, which is already built into that, and again saves $2.6 million, the same $2.6 million.
Can I just make sure I understand what you're saying here? That if we were to go ahead and fund these projects at the cost you've estimated,
Yeah.
that in FY25, the median tax bill would go up by an increment of $1,359.
Yes.
That's over 10%.
That's,
We started at like 11.8, 11.9.
Carrie, what is our estimated median tax bill for 2020 as we're?
I think it's around $12,000.
it's probably more because I'm looking right now for FY19, it was $12,366.
Median is 12.
Yeah, I keep saying 8. I looked it up because I always get it wrong. So it was $12,366 for at FY19 budget requests. So more than that for FY20.
Well, this is great. This is great.
Silence.
That's exactly what we're at, right? So, and that's the motion we wanted to see, right? That,
This is a very
discouraging.
different graph.
It's very different graph than our, right, yeah, hey, look what we were doing.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Who we saw last week says,
That's-
look.
So we either have to stretch out the projects or stretch out the payments. if you want to bring it down.
Fund the stabilization.
Yeah.
fund.
Or buy it when the
Yeah.
building cost is lower,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
Cheaper project.
like, so if you were betting, right, that at some point you're gonna have a downturn, and it's some number of years from now,
Only in fiscal '25.
right, some number of years from now, which then is a double benefit of lower construction costs likely, and balancing out the timing of the project, so therefore we are kind of staggering them a little bit better,
Yeah.
right? So, so then you get closer to your 7-year green projects or whatever, right? It's, like if you just shifted it all this way, right, you have a little bit more balancing.
Carl, if we had a plan back in 2002, how did we get so off plan?
Didn't follow.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just ignore it, right? So,
We got our plan because we got our plan.
What were we supposed to do?
It's on, I have it at home, it's on my computer.
Okay.
Wait, there was a,
Yeah.
wait, committee, right. I sent it around, I'll send it to you. I think you sent it to me a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So we held for our recession, we spread out the payments, we defer some of the projects.
Projects.
What are some other options?
Well, the whole irony is, right, we have all these warrant articles about affordable housing and all this, whereas what we're really talking about sustainability is affordable for everybody other than the 20 units,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of like you get so much attention on the 20, which is a good thing. I mean, I'm not, again, 20, it's good you get attention, but it's the other, 20,000 people that live in town
The
that we're really
competing
talking about
needs.
that. It's, right, maybe it's not sexy, right, to talk about that, but that's sustainable for everybody else.
So I have one more concept to go through with you, and that is the debt ceiling or the debt limit. So somebody somewhere said, well, can we even afford to do these projects? And so I'm going to talk about the legal aspects of that and maybe the credit rating aspects. Whether or not we can afford it is a different sort of question. But so there is this thing called the debt ceiling, which is 5% of the total assessed valuation. So no community or communities only have the legal authority to issue debt up to their debt ceiling. There are some provisions to go above that through, there's a state process. And in my 25 plus years, nobody really ever talked about the debt ceiling because it was always this ridiculously high number. So the total assessed valuation in fiscal 19 is $6.4 billion. The debt limit or the debt ceiling is $322 million. Total outstanding debt as of June 30 was $52.2 million, or 32%.
So, so this is all under the math from the state, right?
Yes.
So this is why it's focused on what's the debt of the town, but it excludes the debt of the high school, right? Because in total, we're at 100 million, then you add OPEB
Right.
and pension, right, we're at 171 million, right?
This,
They don't go in that number, but I know, you want to talk about the balance sheet? The balance sheet's 171 million in debt. Right? That's okay. So that's when I get frustrated by the math because I know that's what the formula tells you, but that's not
Or liability.
The
Or
liability.
It's a
What
liability.
we owe. What we
Right.
owe
Outstanding
is
Yeah, but it's not
171
that.
million.
Debt is one form of an
The
outstanding.
debt is
debt.
100 million of that in high school and the town. So there's 100 million of debt, even though I understand the formula isn't going to count.
Yeah, but this is just debt, this isn't liability.
Yeah, but just debt is 100 million because we have the high school. Is that not our debt?
Our percentage of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, our percentage of it is, right,
This
so
impact on the taxpayer.
our percentage of it is 54 million.
So Carrie, can you explain the line that says amount subject to the debt?
Yes.
What is that?
so there are projects that are authorized within the debt limit and projects that can be authorized outside of the debt limit. Inside of the debt limit, well, maybe I'll go with outside. So what's outside of the debt limit? Typically, utility projects, enterprise fund projects are outside of the debt limit because they're authorized under Chapter 44, Section 8. So water treatment plant, sewer treatment plant, electric utility, those types of things are not subject to the debt limit. School building projects that are financed through the MSBA under Chapter 70B are also outside of the debt limit. School projects that are authorized and funded under Chapter 44, Section 7, which would be something that is not through the MSBA, is subject to the debt limit.
So the CCHS debt is actually outside of this limit. It's
Outside of, yes,
because it's
outside.
done with MSBA
But the
funds.
middle school would be subject.
Would be
Middle
subject.
school would be subject.
But it still doesn't look like we're gonna even
No, you won't
remotely
get- you
be
won't get
close
that
to this 322
Right,
million number.
there is a point to be made. So the amount that's subject to the debt limit is 38.9, almost $39 million, 25% of the, all right, let's just go through this.
12%.
It's,
There it is,
yeah, I didn't
12.1, there you
update
go.
it. For some reason, I don't know why I didn't update that. So it's 12.1% of the debt limit. So if we were to fund all of these 4 projects at these numbers, $155 million, that would bring us to 60% of our debt limit. So 60% of our debt limit is a much bigger percentage than 12% where we are right now. So obviously the question would be, what would the bond rating agencies think about us? In terms of the AAA rated communities in Massachusetts, that cohort, Concord currently has the lowest debt per capita. If we were to fund $155 million, we would go from the lowest to the highest. Right now, there are a couple of other communities that are looking at financing very large school projects, not using the MSBA, I believe. Belmont is one, so it may be a year from now that things look different. But at this point in time, we would go from the lowest to the highest. So the question was asked, would that in and of itself negatively impact our bond rating? And the response that we got back was probably not, if all of the other factors that we look at remain the same. So if our free cash position is strong, if our funding towards our OPEB liability and our pension liability remains strong, if there aren't changes in those, then no, this would likely not impact the bond rating. But if those things also started to change and we issued all of this debt, then that would be an issue for the bond rating agency. And our analyst said, if you want to send me something to model, I'll model that and tell you what we would come to. But just talking about it on the phone for 15 minutes or so, he felt comfortable that if everything else remained the same, that the town's bond rating could withstand a $90 million project. We didn't really talk about $155 million because I thought there's not really a chance that all 4 of these projects are going forward at the same time. So we talked about the school project.
You think you might send him something to model?
I can. I think I probably want to wait until the number, maybe we're a little more sure about the number. I don't want to, we only have so many favors, so maybe.
So Carrie, if we used these plug numbers in our 5-year projection, we'd just be hitting the peak at fiscal 2025. We'd be hitting this peak where the debt service would be up in the region of $23 million. So I think we should be talking. I personally, I mean, I hate to use wildly inflated numbers. But I think what we're hearing from people who have a handle on this sort of thing is they're not wildly inflated numbers, the construction costs. So I think we should be putting these, and here's a big debate. I think in the past, while formulating the 5-year projection, we've never included, or this committee has never included, a cost that wasn't already voted. But I think we're faced with a situation where taxpayers need to see, with appropriate notes, a graph of where we would be if we do all of the things that our various government entities are talking about doing.
You could do two. You can do the way we've always done it, and you can do a pro
Yeah,
forma
right,
that
sure.
says,
Yeah.
here's what would happen if these three things
I think it would be
occurred.
good to do at least one of it. I mean, it basically is just the model that you have, right? That you're, see what it is, and yeah, what do we do with it? That's right.
Yeah, is the 5-year projection used when, on the floor of town meeting, when we're talking about specific articles?
No, it's part of the report. It's
It's
just,
just-
you'll see there's 3 charts that come out of it.
Yeah, okay, well,
I'm not sure anybody looks like
so that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about, it's good to include it both as the way and as a pro forma, but if it's not used when it comes time to actually talk about things that are to be voted on, how do we make that happen?
Well, I think it informs our discussion for sure.
Sure. And it will
Yeah,
be,
but we need to inform the people, the voters.
yes, but it will be in our finance committee report.
But I don't think a lot of people read that.
Well, if it's in the finance committee report, it's fair game to bring it up as a slide
They
in
do look at
the
it.
town meeting, if one so wishes.
And if we're gonna talk about the sustainable growth rate, if we're gonna have that discussion,
Right.
that would be a way to bring it in.
Good
right?
context.
That would be a place we could talk about, there's another projection that we've done.
And there is a way to get people to pay more attention, at least to hook them into reading the finance committee report. And I
Yes.
think I might have suggested this a couple of years ago. It's if you put if you list the members in a little photograph and a little biography of each of the finance committee members, people love looking at that stuff. And it's purely marketing, but that sucks people in.
And that helps us how?
Gets people, they at least get to page
practice.
one of
They
the.
open it. They open it.
I think serving food would help.
Stick dollar bills in it. Maybe they'd open it.
Yeah.
I think when we had the cartoons and stuff on the covers.
Oh, Tony, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Carrie, can I ask, I'm not gonna get this exactly right, but Moody's in their last report used some kind of metric of incorporating the total assessed value of the town relative to some measure of debt service. Are you familiar with that metric? There was an important metric that they cited, and I'm not remembering exactly what it was.
Not off the top of my head.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
So these are sobering numbers, right? That's,
Mhm.
I mean, so it's the first time we've had any glimpse at all into this. Right?
Are we asking Kerry to put this into the a version of the 5-year projection?
I would like to see that, yes. Now, maybe we should go back to the people you discussed target dates with these numbers and say, we'd like to include this in our projection. Are these realistic dates when you want to have a new public safety building, a new public works building? So,
Did you say you staggered them by 5 years?
I did stagger them by 5 years, and I ordered them based on the town manager's preference. So That's
his priority? That you
Yes.
think, in fact?
Uh,
Is that the order they're listed in? Public Works is number one?
No, they went municipal facilities. Go back to that slide. Municipal facilities was the first one.
Oh, I've got it here. I've got it here. Color coded. Yeah, there we
Public
go.
Works. And public safety last.
Red, green,
These impacts really are taking place over, it looks like about a 20-year time, which is staggering 5 years and so on. Is that a problem with the 5-year model?
Well,
It's made for 5 years.
right, the 5-year model is only gonna take, is really going to be missing most of this.
that's the peak.
Those are the
Yeah,
peak, though.
but it's the peak.
So we would have to have some assumptions in order to extend the 5-year. See.
Right, so this is a one-time hit that's equal to 3 years of increases bundled into one, right? And then you have, right, so it's a 10%, so if we're at a 3% number every year, this is a 10% increase in taxes to fund these. And then you still have your one-time, that basically it's in perpetuity, right? Because as soon as this starts rolling up, elementary schools will come again, or whatever it is, right? It just doesn't end.
I guess the 5-year model will take the first year of a middle school.
Right.
The first full year.
Fiscal '25.
Carrie, could you explain the potential debt schedule for a project as large as a $90 million project? Isn't that usually issued in multiple tranches? Or is this model basically just giving us one big huge hit around 24?
So the way that, the way that we modeled it really would be with 2 bond issuances. So I have not included any temporary financing in here, but this would be modeled with a small issuance in '24 and the final issuance in 2025, which is aggressive.
It's only 1 year.
Good year,
Yeah, but-
because it's construct, right?
It's construction.
It's construction.
This is pretty aggressive. Typically, you would see, and I think the elementary schools, there, at least one of them, if not 2 of them, there were 3 debt issuances.
Right.
With Willard, for sure, there were 3 separate debt issuances. The other ones maybe 2. But you would typically see probably 3.
Over.
We just didn't model.
Yeah, it's fine.
We didn't get that complex with our.
Fine. It's huge. It's just a huge leap. That's all.
And, one of the other things that you could consider to smooth the spike is what you've been mentioning, Dean, is to start building reserves now. So you're not, you're building it up slowly, so you're not hitting them with 1,200 more in taxes in 2025.
Very good point.
Which
Yeah,
usually
if we have
comes out
free
of
cash,
free cash.
time just sliding around.
Well, we could put it in the tax rate too, or we could start to slowly build
$5
$5
million.
million.
If we go down to the 5%, it frees up $5 million right there.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mary?
If we went down to the 5% floor, we could free up $5 million of free
Not
cash.
per year, that goes from 155 to 150. It's not 5 million per year. It's a one-time.
One time.
Yes, it's a one-time
So
thing.
it doesn't
Good,
move the
good,
needle.
good point, good point. Yep.
I wish.
But when we're over 10% and people come looking for one-time projects, we might push back and say, we think this is a better use of our funds, is to get some acorns aside.
Or put the acorn aside now, so it isn't quote free cash anymore.
No, I know.
It has to be voted by, I think to set up a stabilization fund hasn't.
Well, I had asked that at the previous meeting, whether or not we
Yes.
had a stabilization fund we could use without another vote. And
There-
I think the answer was yes.
We did, we
There's
did.
some that haven't been extinguished and could potentially be used.
But it
Correct
would
me
be
if
too
I'm wrong,
late,
am I, is that
No,
correct?
you're good.
it would be too late for this meeting.
No, yes,
to
it'll be,
appropriate.
because you still have to vote what you're doing with the cash. You have to say, I'm gonna move the cash to this. It
That's,
has to be
it's
in
too
order.
late, okay.
That's too late for
Too
that.
late for this.
But that's okay. Let's get it on.
Um, We're just trying to figure out what to do at this point. We've asked Carrie to come back with some additional graphic representations. And then we can circulate those by email, certainly. But we don't have another meeting before our public hearing on the 11th. In fact, we don't have another scheduled meeting until March 7th.
But your hearing was the 25th.
It was 11th,
We have
25th.
we actually have three. So we have one on the 11th, one on the 25th, and one on the combined meeting with the select
With
board.
the enterprise funds.
Do you remember what date that
February
is?
11.
March 11th on the front of the warrant.
Public hearing is
February
February.
11, February 25, and March 11.
Okay,
The select board is
11
on
and
the
25, and
26th.
then this is.
11, okay.
11 and 25.
Okay, I can't develop any guidance right now on this. I'm still trying to absorb
I
this.
think it's gonna take a while.
Can you call a special FinCom meeting in the interim?
We could,
All the appropriate disclosures in advance to further
sure.
go over some of these issues?
After the hearings?
At any time that's possible, yeah.
Do we buy into the concept that this should see the light of, or some version of this should see the light of day and as part of our,
Well, I think we should see what it looks like ourselves, and then decide whether it should see the light of day.
We want to make sure that, I think that it's not going to get, that it's legitimate and
Exactly.
defensible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to have anything that's going to seem inflammatory or.
No.
No, as long as all the assumptions with respect to the estimates are stated, with respect to the timing and the amounts and et cetera.
yeah, but magnitude, right? But like the big takeaway is the capital projects considered / needed would be a significant hit to the average taxpayer, right? 10% magnitude, right? And you can argue with the timing and the exact amounts, but that's the magnitude. So it's significant, right? But it's not as a rounding error, right? Then maybe it's the sustainable growth rate discussion, right? As part of that warrant, like where does it see the light of day at town
Which
meeting?
one? Which
I
one?
think we could certainly put it in our report, which we ought to, but where does it really see the light of day,
Exactly.
right? And get some consideration. And so it's clearly a town meeting, and is it in response to, ultimately is it in response to our discussion about the middle school project, which is the biggest one for sure? Is it part of SPR discussion as well?
So right now, we're scheduled to be discussing our article on the sustainable growth rate at the hearing of February 25th. And that will be sort of training exercise for a town meeting. So really, I think we ought to know what our stance is on this information well in advance of the hearing of the 25th.
I'll note that at the town meeting, our discussion of sustainable growth rate, if they follow the order of the warrant, will be after the middle school feasibility study.
I want to say for the purposes of our excellently kept meeting minutes, that I believe our use of the phrase "see the light of day" refers to putting out information that we put our seal of approval on.
Yes.
And everything that's produced at this meeting obviously is public information.
Correct, our synopsis of it, or whatever our conclusion
Yes.
is. Exactly. That's
Right.
Good clarification.
Thank you for doing all these charts, Carrie.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very
thanks,
helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
really very thought-provoking. So,
So the sustainable growth rate article is asking for town approval for us to routinely look at the 5-year projection. Is that correct? And tie it to some index to be determined? No? Tell me your number.
no, I mean, as I see it, it's a little different. So the 5-year projection, as I understand it, and Dean, you're the expert on this, please correct me if I'm wrong, is our projected tax burden on taxpayers for the 5 fiscal years succeeding the fiscal year
Right,
that's the matter of the town meeting.
right.
And that is based upon all of the known factors that affect.
Right, but the article is,
So our
exactly what
article,
is the article asking?
the article on the sustainable growth rate,
Yes.
is it 19, I can't remember what number it
It's
is.
18.
18, is something different. It is an expression by the finance committee of what would be a prudent rate of growth for that fiscal year and the succeeding 5 fiscal years.
Relative to people's ability to pay.
Yes, yes. But that would also,
Because it says here that it would include for the upcoming fiscal year and for each of the 5 following fiscal years, a projection of the likely total tax burden on citizens, which is the 5-year, right?
No, that's something
How's that
we already do, and we're adding that into the bylaw. It was never put in the bylaw.
keep reading.
Keep
Okay.
reading, it's not,
And
it's
based
clause
on that
number 2.
burden, a recommended sustainable growth rate, so that said section 4 reads as follows to help, so,
So there's the 5-year projection was voted at town meeting in, 2011, I think?
so that would be in the finance report. Go ahead. And this is
Okay, and
saying,
we put it in the finance report, but it was never added to any of the formalized paperwork. The, what do we call that? The administrative code, or the
Right.
bylaw?
That's right.
And then we came up, this finance committee has come up with sustainable growth rate. So we want to put both those two things into the formal documents that drive the finance committee's work. One was voted in 2011, was never added to the
2009.
2009 was
Yeah.
never added to the paperwork, and so that's just a housekeeping item. You know, how am I not explaining this?
You know what maybe is
Again,
confusing
I
is,
don't know.
It's not,
you know what's maybe confusing is,
what is,
reading this closely now, right? There's the projected likely total tax burden on citizens, which
Right.
is the 5-year.
exactly.
But then this next section which says based on that burden,
Yes.
maybe that's the part that's not even relevant. It should just be, you know, you have a projection of what's there, and then separately, a recommended sustainable growth
Yeah,
rate. So it's
yes,
not, it's
yes.
not
It's not
really,
based
it's
on-
not based, so the words based on this burden
Okay,
really is, I don't think, is really the intent. So it's not,
We
right,
could-
it's really
probably
based on,
could Edit the article to take
Oh.
that out.
you know what I'm saying? Right, it's not based, on so we're not looking at the 5-year.
Motion.
We're
so
not
it's
looking
two
at-
separate things. One
Two
is
separate
5
concepts.
years,
The motion-
based
no, the
on new
motion-
projections.
The motion would, yeah.
And one is what we would consider a prudent growth rate.
Correct, so it's almost like you get rid of the disclaimer based on the
Well,
burden. So
well,
there's-
okay, so, all right, so
I'm just
to
trying
get back to that, why that clause is there. That clause is there because it was somewhat nebulous what the rate we were talking about had been. Is it the rate of growth of the town's budgets, or is it the rate of growth of the tax burden? So, and those are different things.
Oh, okay, so that's why
Okay.
you put it on, based on that.
The
burden.
town's budget can go up if there's internal growth, and so the budget goes up. But we're trying to get to something where the burden on the taxpayer is advancing in a sustainable way. I think that's the goal of that clause.
So is
Because it's not, you know, we're parsing in a very detailed way, but, you know.
So is it really to a recommended sustainable growth rate of tax burden?
Of the tax
Of
burden,
the tax- so-
of that tax burden.
Of the tax burden, as opposed to based on the tax burden?
Yeah, exactly, you
Okay,
take
that's
based on and you
Yeah, right.
can move that
So
around.
would this be a
Yeah.
nice segue, would this be the appropriate segue of just saying, and based on sustainable growth rate, what we're seeing if we go ahead with this debt service is that we would be outside of those guardrails?
That's correct. That seems to be the conclusion we are staring at. Yes.
Arguably even without this debt service.
Possibly.
Sadly,
You
right,
have
even
to run
without
a
that.
model. I don't know how to
Sadly.
model it.
Okay, just wondered where we're going.
So, any further discussion on this point? Right? Hearing none. Any public comment? Wouldn't touch any of this with a 10.
You gotta have some.
Nothing.
I think that's comment enough. Okay. There being no, Mr. Grom.
Robert Grom, school committee, but speaking as a resident, what would Trevanian say to all this?
Oh my God, we'd be here till 11 o'clock.
Well, I would put that question to his cousin. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Please leave. Thank you.